you are worthy. You have nothing that you need to prove. You are loved exactly as you are. You have so many beautiful, important qualities and gifts to share with the world, but it has nothing to do with the way that you look.
We have the beginning, middle and end of a book. We have no control over the beginning. We have no control over the end. We have that massive chunk in the middle, and that's where the climax happens. That's where all the really exciting stuff happens.
Hi everybody, thank you for tuning in today. I'm really excited to have Sarah Menlove with me here today. Sarah, please let us know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you to all of you who are joining us. Yeah, like Ali said, my name's Sarah Menlove. I'm, in a professional sense, a holistic health coach specialising in intuitive eating, body image, self-love and self-acceptance and all of those good things. I'm from originally the bottom of the South Island, a small countryside, not even a town. I was going to say town, but not a town. I'm from the country in Southland, and currently I'm living in Mount Maunganui. And anything more about me, I'm pretty into yoga, meditation, nature, being at the beach, going on adventures. I've spent quite a bit of time traveling, spent 9 months in Central America a couple of years ago, thankfully now. So yeah, I have many different aspects to my life, but in terms of what we're talking about today, coaching is what I do.
Nice. And you mentioned just before intuitive eating. People that have no idea what that means. I mean, people know about intuition, but what does that mean in relation to food consumption?
Yeah, so intuitive eating is a process to support you to come back to your natural way of being with food. And that's really what intuition's all about, is connecting you with your inner guidance system and being able to make empowered choices for yourself, not from rules, regulations, or what someone else has told you should do. And I believe in intuitive eating believes that we all come into the world as intuitive eaters. We kind of, we eat, we cry when we're hungry, we spit our food out when we're done. And as we go through our lives, we get conditioned into many different rules around food. We see maybe our family members dieting, maybe we got put on a diet when we were young, or if none of that happened, we live in a world that promotes restrictive eating and changing your body, and that leads to us changing the way that we eat and making decisions that mean that we don't always allow ourselves to have adequate nourishment, nutrition, or just eat the things that we enjoy. So intuitive eating is really about removing the rules and coming back to a place of freedom, peace, and self-trust around food in your body.
I love that. And it's funny you say that, because I just had a little light bulb moment. Like, you don't even consciously ever think like, society's brought me up to tell me that I need 3 meals a day at these times, and they have to be this big. And yeah, you don't even think about it. It's just like you said, that conditioning. And I had a pizza at 12 o'clock last night in the middle of the night when I was awake and hungry, because I was wired, and I was thinking I could force myself to go and sleep, or I could just chill, eat something that's going to make me like happy on this buzz that I'm on, and just and I don't care that it's midnight. It's like a midnight feast, and you just feel good about it and doing something that might not be the best for you at the time, but just following your kind of vibe that you're on, and eating when you're hungry, like you said, because I think some people, we kind of train into that morning tea and then lunch and then afternoon tea and then dinner, and then it's just
exactly. And going the other way of like, don't eat before this certain time in the morning, or all of I'm not going to go into all of the things because I don't want to put ideas out there, and there's enough of those messages out there, but really the denial of hunger is such a huge one that I see in people of not acknowledging and honoring hunger, and not allowing yourself to eat the food that you truly want, and then choosing something else, but then always continually thinking about the one food that you actually wanted at the start, like the pizza, right? Last night, if you were like, I'm not going to have a pizza, I'm going to have like some leftover salad instead, and then you go, that really wasn't satisfying, maybe I'll have something else, and I'm still not satisfied. Why am I still not satisfied? I've had all these different things to eat. It's because you wanted the pizza, and then the next day you might wake up and be like, why can't I stop thinking about pizza? So that happens, yeah.
It's so true. I love how we had a conversation about pizza. It kind of led you down this pathway of helping other people with this eating and feeling good in their bodies.
Yeah, so this is quite a huge part of my story. And what led me to what I'm doing now is I certainly went far off the path of intuitive eating. I did a lot of the things that I've just talked about. I was a personal trainer for a number of years and also a competitive triathlete. So I represented New Zealand at age group level. For any of you sporting ones out there, yeah, I did different World Championships events overseas, and I was training in Australia for a number of years, also did some half Ironmans. And I got to a place where when I was working in the gym as well, before I even started triathlon, so going back a little bit further, I was 21, I moved to Australia, having just left uni, started my first job in a gym as a personal trainer, decided to lose some weight, went down this path that most gyms promote, and I fell into as a personal trainer of like doing a challenge, getting my skin folds done, getting my measurements done, weighing myself, speaking to a nutritionist who put me on a meal plan so that I could lose weight. And I really took that to the extreme. That is very common, but it was celebrated. And my body started to change, and I started to get praise, and people started to tell me how good I looked. And, you know, I was training intensely in the gym. I cut out food groups. I was having meal replacement shakes. I was weighing myself, and I felt like I was doing the right thing. I felt like I was being healthy. I felt like I was achieving, but my life, I suppose, was getting smaller as I was shrinking my body. So I was becoming obsessed with what I was eating, what I wasn't eating, when I could go out with friends, when I had to do my training sessions, all those sorts of things. And then from that point, I started triathlon. So I went into triathlon with this mindset of my body being this small is the most important thing. And when you're wearing a lycra triathlon suit and your relationship with your body has become destructive, it's like, I need to maintain this size. So I started training, for those of you who know triathlon, obviously you swim, bike, run, and then I was also doing gym workouts for strength. So like 4 hours a day, potentially some days, as well as working in a gym doing physical things with my clients as well. And that led me to be, quite successful in my sport, but also to get a really unhealthy and destructive relationship with exercise, with food, with my body, to the point that I lost my period, and I didn't have my period for over 4 years. And then I ended up in training for one of my World Championship events with a stress fracture. So I was walked into a sports doctor's office one day and was told that I wouldn't be going to that event, and chances are I wouldn't be competing at that level again. And so any of you who have been, really competitive in sport, or just like enjoyed doing those things and have trained for something for a long time, I was devastated. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I also had all of this fear come to the surface around my body changing. So I was super afraid that I was going to gain weight. I knew that regaining my period meant stopping training. Obviously, I had to heal from my stress fracture, but I also knew that I had to stop training. I had to start eating these foods that I'd restricted for so many years, and I just had to relax. And that was really, really challenging. And I really found in that place that I didn't realize how unhealthy my relationship with myself had become until that was taken away from me, and I was forced to sit with all of the emotions that came up. And that's when I started, I went through that dark period for a while where I didn't know who I was and what I was going to do, but I stopped training and I did the things that I needed to do with the mindset of I might go back to that one day. But in the process, I found, thankfully, coaching, and I started studying, and I started learning about mindset, and I started learning more about, mental health and emotional health. And I did start working with my own body image coach, which supported me to heal my relationship with my body and come into the place that I'm at now, which is feeling free, feeling at peace. I've gained weight and my body's bigger than it ever was when I was competing naturally, but I feel much more confident in my skin. I feel comfortable in who I am. And I never thought that would be possible when I was that small. So yeah, a lot's changed, and I'm so grateful for all of that, because now this is the work that I get to do and share with others.
It's incredible, like the transformation and the roller coaster, like everything you said about suddenly your whole identity is attached to how you look and how your body functioned, you know. And I mean, of course there was like the thrill of the sport and everything else as well, but overall when your identity is attached so much to how you are physically at that stage, it's like, well, what happens when that stops? It's like, you know, people that suddenly become paralyzed, or kind of a similar thing, isn't it? You kind of lose that whole sense of everything. So yeah, it's amazing that you've come through that and are able to teach some processes and things. What would you say to your, like, now you've kind of gone through the mill a bit with your own journey and helped other people, what's one thing you would say to your younger self now when you were going through the hard stuff that might have helped you get through it quicker, like a little bit of knowledge maybe?
Well, I think just before I go into that, like as you shared about identity, yeah, so much of that is related to self-worth. So when you attach your identity, your sense of self and your worthiness to something external, whether that's your body or your sporting performance or your job or your productivity, then that being taken from you, or that not being there anymore or possible anymore, will lead to all of those feelings that I described. Versus when you can find your sense of self-worth from within, from your internal qualities, knowing that you are inherently worthy, that you are born worthy, that you don't have anything to prove, then everything outside, like, because so much will change throughout our lives, and I think this year especially people are really feeling this, that change is inevitable, and the way that we roll with that and flow with it and allow ourselves to change and evolve comes from knowing that we're worthy, regardless of our external reality. And so I guess that would be one of the things I would say to my younger self, like, you are worthy, you have nothing that you need to prove, you are loved exactly as you are, you have so many beautiful, important qualities and gifts to share with the world, but it has nothing to do with the way that you look. Yeah, and just trust yourself, because I think a whole lot of what's wrapped up in there is needing to prove your worth, needing to prove and validate yourself and gain love, because you don't maybe have that for yourself.
I totally agree, and that's something I was talking about at the parent event last night. Was, you know, we're brought up in a society that, yes, values like traditions and getting good at stuff, like having those certificates, and you know, if you live up to the school values, you get recognised, and there's prize givings for doing well at stuff. And if you're a part of a drama group, you put on a show. If you're in a sports team, you compete at events. Everything that we do is attached to then having some kind of recognition or system at the end of it. There's no, like, what do you feel like doing just to make yourself feel good for you? Internally, it's all based on who can you please, or who can you prove something to, or who can you be better than, you know? So.
Yeah, and that's interesting you brought that up, because I actually was cleaning out some stuff from my parents' house when they moved a few months ago, and there's like big tubs of medals and what are they called when they're not medals? The other ones, ribbons and medals and trophies and things from when I swam competitively through high school. So yeah, not only did I get into the gym and triathlon, I spent basically from 8 years old, but really seriously from 12 years old, swimming competitively, 5 a.m. starts, you know, again, that sort of 3 hours a day of intense exercise, never listening to your body. You just got up when your alarm went off and you went to the pool regardless of how tired you were, and you got in and you did the thing, and you learn so much through that culture, right, of like being strong, pushing through, like doing the thing that you said you were going to do, even if it doesn't feel good, or even if your body's, you know, in pain or whatever. There's this sort of really tough, this is tough and you need to be this. And I've noticed as I've gone on my own journey of understanding myself and learning to love myself, is that can relate to our emotions, to every sort of aspect of our life, of how we really listen to or don't listen to ourselves, and honor ourselves and care for ourselves. So yeah, there's that whole achievement, people pleasing, and then there's also the body stuff that comes with that around punishment and yeah, all the messages there.
It's like I remember going through college, and back when I wanted to be a silver fern netball player, I was like, but never in the top team, so it was always felt like a very distant dream. But at that stage, I know now looking back, it was only because I was around competitive netball players, and I was like, yeah, I want to do it as well. But I think, going through that and going to the trainings and stuff, so like the really competitive ones, when I was like starting to enjoy being able to at least train with the higher skilled girls, I used to say to myself, like you said, about that pain of getting up at 6 to go to school early to train for a whole hour, and I hated every single minute. But because they were like, yeah, it's the morning, the sun's coming up, I'm like, I hate this, like it's not my thing. And then but you do it because you're like, well, I want to be seen as just as committed as these guys. And it's like, if you don't do it our way, then you can't possibly be as good. And like leaving school and finding my dance fitness, I'm going to do a shout out to them because it's awesome. But I've got friends that go to the gym and that really suits them, but then they come to dance and they're like, I can't do it. And I'm like the same, but the opposite. Like, I love dancing, I love doing community group sport, but then if I go to the gym, I'm like the most unmotivated person ever. Like, and it took me a while to get my head around the fact that just because I'm sporty doesn't mean I have to be good in every sport environment in terms of my motivation and my ability to connect with how that's making me feel. So yeah, it's interesting you say that about the whole pushing through and just doing it to kind of feel like you're committed and worthy of doing whatever that thing is.
I think when you walk away from that, or like when some of the clients that I work with, when they realize that the way that they're exercising or moving their body isn't healthy, like they're in this toxic over exercising pattern, and they step away, it creates the space to ask that question of what do I enjoy. And for me, in all honesty, like, I loved swimming. I probably didn't love some of the training sessions and some of the early mornings and those things, but there's a love for the water that I still really have. But for a lot of people, it's that question, like you said, of why am I doing this? What's my intention? And do I even enjoy it? And if I could open up everything was possible about how I chose to move my body, rest my body, what would I actually choose to do for fun and enjoyment, and that feels really good, whether that's gentle stretching and yoga, or dancing in whatever form, whether it's ballet dancing or ecstatic and wild crazy dancing outside on the grass, or going to something that a dance class that someone else puts on, or running, or going to the gym, or swimming, or some of your more traditional forms. But I think we do get conditioned into what exercise has to look like, and that's just not what suits a lot of people and isn't enjoyable for some people. So it's really about letting go of all that and being like, what feels good? What do I enjoy? And if it doesn't look anything like what you've been brought up doing or what your friends do, that's okay too, because everyone and everybody is different.
Yeah, and I think it really does start with schools as well. The fact that PE lessons, it's like there's no variety really. It's like you play team games, or you do like, I used to hate cross country with a passion. Like, I was not a runner by any means, but then when I started running for my own benefit, like my own pleasure, and picking my routes and having my music, I was like, okay, I can do this. But the fact that you go through school and you're kind of forced to run cross country and you're not allowed to take your music, and there's all this like looking bad if you walk it, and it's just this whole, everything needs to change. I'm on like this beeline mission to shift the education system. But I think in the body and health sector, like, they teach you in health class about nutrition and kind of intuitive eating, like doing what feels good for you a little bit, but then they don't mirror that with the way they teach exercise. It's all like, well, you have to do the beep test and you have to play volleyball, and it's not ideal.
For a lot of people as well, just to touch on that, it's and something I never thought of, because I was that kid in school that loved PE, that was like, let's do the thing, and the teacher loved me and all of that. But looking back now, I can see, and from what I've learned through my own journey, is that can be a really traumatizing place for a lot of people. That can create a whole lot of judgment, a whole lot of feelings of shame and embarrassment and guilt for not being able to do the thing that the teacher expects everyone to do, or and kids can be unkind, right? It's like, there's teasing and laughing and getting changed in changing rooms and swimming pools, and often not the conversations facilitated by an adult around those situations to create a safe and supportive environment for everyone to thrive. And so while I got out of that unscathed because I had that love for movement at the time, I can see now that can create a really unhealthy relationship with exercise and with body moving forward for someone who found that environment was challenging. They didn't get the support that they needed, plus there was shame and judgment piled on top of them because of that. And then why would you choose to go and exercise after that when you're older, if that was your experience in your formative years of what it meant to be in your body and move your body? And yeah, so I guess just highlighting that, to have that experience is challenging, and it's okay if that's not a place that you enjoy being in.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, I remember like good and bad things about PE. I always enjoyed like I said, similar to now, like the community style team game stuff and all that. But yeah, I definitely felt the pressure and like that. I know schools have different rules around if you're sick on the day that they have it. Some schools like mine made you redo it another day by yourself, like just to get you to do it. And actually, they didn't realise that half the kids that were sick actually just didn't feel good doing it. And they still get forced. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you making them do this? But yeah, it's a huge topic, and I think there's lots of subjects that are the same, how we think and how we feel about all kinds of stuff, but sport's definitely a big one because that encapsulates your mental health as well, because that's attached to your physical health. If you're not feeling good in your body, your mental health's automatically going to do this anyway. Speaking of which, you've kind of touched on this without putting words around them as such, but what would you say now are your core values and morals? And then when it comes to your work, do you discuss that with people, like what your morals and values are, like in a roundabout way, and maybe ask them what theirs are to kind of help relate to them? It makes sense to help them connect with what you're saying in a way that kind of feels true to them.
Yeah, good question. I guess a big one is authenticity, so the ability to be authentic and in integrity, and honesty goes alongside that. So being true and honest to yourself and being able to express yourself authentically, and also be in integrity with what you do and what you say. And I think that's always, that can be a practice and a process, of realizing where you might be out of that and then coming back to it. But authenticity is huge because that's obviously, when we are disconnected from ourselves, when we feel like we're not good enough, or our body's not good enough, or all of those sort of thoughts that come along with food and body image and different things, then it's very hard to be authentic in our relationships or in whatever we're doing, because the mind is kind of creating a story that's making us make choices or say things that, because of wanting to be perceived a certain way or wanting to look good enough, that we're not fully expressing our authenticity. So I guess I don't really have that conversation with people, but that's what the work's about. It's about helping people reconnect to their own authentic expression and ability to create relationships from that feel authentic and connecting. And alongside that, obviously, love and connection, because if we don't have that love and connection with ourselves, it's very hard to have love and connection with the people in our lives, our partners or our friendships or our business relationships or whatever it might be. So yeah, helping people to find that love for themselves and then share from that place. I think that's kind of some of the big ones.
Yeah, no, that's cool, because that's the reason I ask, is because I was going to touch on with the whole school system thing is like, schools have their value list of like, acronym, but for some kids going into school, just to be an extreme example, that if respect is one of the values at school, the way respect is expected to be manifested in the school environment, every kid's going to have a different version of what respect means where they come from. Some it might be violent, some it might be really loving and hands-on, others it will be a mixture of all kinds of stuff. Like everyone has their own way of going into acknowledging a particular view on a value or moral is. And if for example you see like love in a particular way, like love for your body, like you said, because a lot of people will probably come to you, correct me if I'm wrong, thinking that they've loved their body because of the way they've been conditioned to. So it's hard. I'm really struggling to like put this into words. You know where I'm kind of going?
I understand what you're saying a little bit more now, and I guess I haven't said it or reflected on it in terms of values in that way, and it actually might be a good thing for me to spend some time on and just kind of like nut out a little bit. But one thing that I understand what you're saying is that the meaning that we make about things is more important than what it actually is. So having an understanding of what someone's perception of that is, which is likely going to be different to your own. And one of the things I do is I do have paradigms, which are more ways of thinking that kind of outline the beliefs that I hold about certain topics that we're going to be discussing, that I'll speak through with someone and then get an understanding of where that lands for them and where they're at within that. So it creates that dialogue or discussion. But yeah, like what you shared about loving, and that term comes up sometimes. It's like, what does loving your body mean to you? And most people, that means loving their body the way that society has taught them to love your body. So it needs to look a certain way, wearing certain clothes or exercising a certain amount, or quite external, for example, versus my version of loving your body, which is unconditional, self-sustained. You have a love that creates certain actions or ways of caring for and respecting your body, that doesn't require your body to be looking a certain way or functioning a certain way, or because then we get into like ability, sickness, we could go down, like skin color and gender and sexuality and all of those sorts of things that tie into that. So the ability to care for all of you and love all of you without it needing to look the way that society is presented.
Yeah, sure. And I think it's awesome that you're doing a job like you have a lifestyle and a business that kind of intertwine. Like it's good to see you've created something that is without you really maybe always consciously being aware of it, is based on your morals and your values and stuff. And I think that's what a lot of new industries coming through and a lot of entrepreneurial ideas and things that are coming out are very much really at the core coming from a place of morals and values and shifting the way people think about the world and who we are in it. So it's awesome to hear you explain where, like, because we know your story, but I think beneath the story there's all those other things as well, and that's where the core of it is. So it's really cool. Based on the work that you've done and created over the years, what would you say are the main kind of contributors towards how and why we learn to see ourselves and our bodies and how they should be? Like, what do you think of that?
Yeah, so I think that's a really important question, because so often we think things just are the way that they are, like this is just how it is. And most often when I start working with someone, we start at the level of awareness. So it's this creating awareness about how our beliefs actually are formed, why we think the way that we do or see things the way we do, because we all have different lenses that we're seeing the world through and therefore seeing ourselves through. And it's that lens that we get to kind of have a look at how that was shaped and how, maybe your relationship with your body was formed throughout your life, which, like anything, it was. We form our beliefs about ourselves, about the world, when we're from the time we come into the world to up till 7 years old is where our core belief systems are formed. So if we, were born and, well, let's go there. When we were born, we came into the world kicking and screaming and playing with our toes and playing with our tummies and rolling around on the floor, right? So this little bundle of joy had no kind of conscious thought of my body is wrong, my body is bad, there's something wrong with me, I need to change the way I am being. You know, they're just there. And then as they start to socialize, there becomes like more so subconsciously at that time, we're at pre-verbal, so you're subconsciously absorbing all of the world around you. Yes, you're not consciously thinking about what you need to change about your body or what's wrong with you, and but you are starting to form some subconscious beliefs about yourself and the world. So you're absorbing everything around you, whether maybe you had a parent or a caregiver who was struggling with her relationship with her body, because with all compassion, you know, she's lived in this society as well. She's received the same messages. So you might have grown up with someone who struggled with her relationship with her body, or someone who was on a diet, or was sharing messages about food, or as you grew up, you know, you might have gone to school or kindy and heard people talking about their bodies or their food. Maybe that was the teachers or the other kids. At some point you might have been told like, oh, you can't wear that, or you need to, oh, don't eat that, like that's not okay, you can't have that to eat now. Or you might have been told you needed to go on a diet or lose weight. And if that happened, you know, in those really young years, you were deciding things about yourself. And then that's before you even come into the world of social media a lot of the time, and then you're scrolling through Instagram and looking at images and watching TV and watching movies that have only certain bodies portrayed more often than others, or looking at models or magazines or celebrities. And this is changing a little bit. This is getting a little bit better, I will say. But for most of us, those images when we were growing up were quite centered on a thin white body, you know, that was presented as the norm. And so we're learning through all of that we're absorbing. And that's really how we can start to say, oh, I've actually taken on board all of these messages that aren't my truth. Because like I said at the start, we came into the world kicking, screaming, loving our body, rolling around on the floor, having fun with our body, just being as we are. And then as we grew up and absorbed all of those messages, we decided that that wasn't good enough anymore at some point, you know, along the way. And so it's about starting to unlearn all of those things. Yeah.
The process.
Yeah, but it's big, and it's like, wow, it's when you can do it younger and younger, like, you know, if you're watching this video and you're someone who's in your early teens, it's like, this is so powerful for you to know, because you get to take this information and see the world through a new lens. So it doesn't mean that these messages are going to go away, but it means that you can start to see them and think, actually, this isn't supporting me, this isn't creating a healthy body image, this is making me think that there's something wrong with me. And when you notice that, or you notice like, oh, when I'm looking at this or reading this thing or watching this ad or this program, I'm thinking that my body's not good enough, or I need to lose weight, go on a diet, change the way I look, then you get to catch that thought and remember this conversation, and remember that that's not your truth, that's the society that we live in, trying to sell you something, but also creating this idea that you're not good enough as you are, which you are, and your body is, and it doesn't need to look like the way that someone is trying to tell you it should look in order to sell something. But yeah, I hope that you can take some of these things that I've shared and just see through a new lens, and have a little more, you know, compassion for yourself and your body, and be able to care for yourself in that way.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I was just going to say, you made me think of something. What would you say to people that are watching right now that are either perhaps quite overweight, or perhaps underweight, or have an eating problem or eating disorder of some kind, or are really have been told by a doctor perhaps that they're you know, going to get sick if they keep going the way they're going, like, or if they're in a really tricky situation right now and are thinking, where do I start with this? What's the first step I can take towards loving myself better and making better choices? Like, what would be like a little tip you could give to kind of get the ball rolling on helping them lift themselves out of possible downward spiral even more.
The first thing I just want to say is, regardless of what anyone's told you, you don't need to lose weight in order to be healthy. So I use principles called health at every size practice. And so I would just encourage you to begin taking care of yourself, like we've talked about, like doing things you enjoy and for movement, not doing things for punishment because you want to lose weight, because that never works. And I'm not going to go into weight loss not working long term, but if any of you have gone on a diet or tried to do that and it hasn't lasted, that's not your fault. Our bodies aren't designed to cope with restriction, and intentional weight loss is actually a lot more harmful to health than being able to be in the body that you're in and take care of yourself. So you can take care of yourself, you can take care of your health without it being about changing your body. And so I would begin that practice by encouraging you to move in ways that feel joyful for you, by eating foods that nourish you, that you enjoy, but without the guilt and the shame or the judgment or the restriction that might have been suggested to you. So removing those kind of rules, like we talked about with intuitive eating, that gives you possibility. Like, sure, eat your vegetables, eat your fruit, but also eat, a wide variety of foods, and notice how your body feels and notice what you enjoy and give yourself that permission. What else would I say? And then I want to just speak to, if you are someone who is struggling with your relationship with your body and you've been restricting food for a long time, how can you start to come out of that cycle? And it's very similar, right? What I'm going to suggest is very similar, is start to give yourself that permission. Know that in order to be healthy, it's about so much more than what you're eating and the size of your body. It's really about your mindset around food, your mindset around your body and how you're treating yourself and speaking to yourself. So get support. If you need support, reach out to someone. Don't be afraid to tell someone that you're struggling with these things, because it's so scarily common and you're not alone. And have so much compassion for yourself. And you might be like, what does that even mean? That means just think about how you would speak to a friend who was going through something like this. How would you talk to them? What would you offer them? And chances are you would let them know that they're not alone, that you want to help them, that it's safe for them to talk to you, to share with you, you might give them a hug, and what parts of that can you offer to yourself? Just really be kind to yourself as much as you can.
I love that as well, and I know exactly what you mean about diets and stuff. I know a few people in my life that have really struggled with it. Like, they've been doing well, and then, like you said, it stops, or they gain it all back later, and it just becomes more of a mental struggle rather than an actual physical one. Half the time it's that, like, I'm a failure, I'm not the results that I think I want. And yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at in my body right now, but there've been times, like last night with the pizza, I was feeling guilty. I'm like, I ate it, but I was like, I'm eating cheese and like bread at midnight. This is not good, but it was like, sometimes doing those things can get you into a headspace to then feel better about making choices that might be a little bit more like healthy or better later. But it's like, if you've given yourself that little bit of balance with the way you go about eating, instead of, like you said, too much of one thing or doing everything like you have to, it's like, it's a mental game as much as an actual physically picking up food and eating it kind of game, right?
It's, yeah, when you remove the restriction, like if you gain weight back after a diet, of course that's so natural. That's the body coming back to its balance. Because anytime you're on a restrictive diet, or you're even just telling yourself you can't have certain foods, the body is going, this feels like a famine to me. This feels like I'm going to starve. And most calorie restrictive diets out there are literally starvation. Like, you are putting your body into a starvation response. And that creates stress, that creates inflammation, that creates all the things that contribute to disease, right? And then people blame the weight. So it's like, actually, chronic dieting is creating health conditions, and our body's way of responding to restriction, which is basically famine, is like, give me the food, I want the food. And then people feel like, why am I out of control around food? Why do I see that packet of biscuits and feel compelled to eat the whole packet? Because the body is saying, give me calories. Like that, what you've been feeding me is not enough to sustain me. And combine that with psychologically saying, you can't have that biscuit, you can't have that biscuit. Your mind's going to go like, I want the biscuit, I want the biscuit, I want the biscuit, right? So
they'll go and eat the whole jar.
Yeah. So, you know, if you've had that experience as well, it's okay. It's not your fault. Like there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your body. Instead of demonizing that food or that behavior, I really encourage you to look at the restriction, to again, give yourself permission, open up possibilities with food. And this, for most people, this is a process. Intuitive eating as well, for anyone who's interested, is a book. I obviously practice from this perspective, but there's a lot of resources online that you can find, and a book called Intuitive Eating, which takes you through step by step the principles of intuitive eating that I work with in my practice as well, that allow you to start to listen to your body and honor your hunger and give yourself permission to eat, and feel at peace around food. Like when I talk to clients, it's like, what do you want? They're like, freedom, peace, to just free up my brain space so I'm not thinking about food and my body all of the time, so that I can live my life. And ultimately that's the gift that intuitive eating and body acceptance gives us.
What would you say if like people have food addiction in areas like fast food or high calorie or high salt or high fat foods, that, you know, the ones that make us feel good, like when you have a pizza, it's coming into the conversation a lot, but like, yeah, if that's what makes me feel good, is that okay? Like to keep, yeah, the unhealthy?
My question is usually like, is that the only way that you get to feel good? Nice. Because there's a huge difference between every time something stressful happens, that's the only way you know to cope. Like, firstly, awesome, celebrate that you're coping, right? Food is a great coping strategy that many people have had from childhood, from times in their lives when they actually didn't have any other way to survive experiences, to get feel-good hormones. I don't really believe in food addiction. I believe that sometimes food is used for coping, and that's a genuine way to cope if that's used in conjunction with many other strategies. If that's the only resource, then it can become challenging, not necessarily solely because of the food, but because that person's probably not processing what it is that they're feeling and moving through that experience so that they can be free of that and so that they can create more of what they want. So generally, I would help people open up possibilities with how they cope with challenging emotions or stress or whatever's going on in their life, and know that like food might be one of those options along with so many others, and then there's choice. But if there's been restriction in the past, and I'll say this because this is important, if someone's had a history of restriction, then the chances of using food to cope are much higher. So we need to look at both together. When you have a free and healthy relationship with food, the chances that you're going to use food to cope emotionally are less, because your body's not in starvation, so you're able to access those other ways to cope a lot easier.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up. I think that was a good way to go, because yeah, I think it can be easy to get hooked on a particular food, but like you said, not really realize where that's coming from or why, or what else might be going on and what else we could do.
And asking what you need, right? Like, what do I need in this moment? You know, how do I want to feel? And sometimes people are like, I want to feel relaxed. Okay, what are the things that help me feel relaxed? Having a bath, like listening to some nice music, doing a meditation, breathing, having a pizza, like, you know, and then but then you can choose from a whole lot of different things, and maybe it's a combination.
Yeah.
And maybe one time it's one of them and another time it's another, and that's okay. And when our mindset as well is like removing the judgment and having compassion for yourself, when you choose the behavior that you may not have wanted to choose, right? Like you might be like, I'm gonna practice breathing instead of having pizza every time I feel stressed. But one time, and I'm sorry, we're demonizing the pizza. Like, pizza is great. But then there's a time that comes when you choose that. It's like having that compassion for yourself, being able to remove the ongoing cycle of judgment and shame and punishment that continues to beat yourself up. Because if we're talking about self-love, right, it's like, how can you, the external practice of self-love, I heard this somewhere and I really liked it, is compassion. So the way that we show that love externally is to be compassionate with ourselves. I just feel like there's quite a lot there. So if you've been listening, like, take some time to absorb and wrap your head around it. And I might have shared some things that are challenging or uncomfortable for you, and that's okay. You might have heard some things that you don't right now believe to be true, but that may support you in the future, or you might have heard exactly what you needed to hear. So wherever you are on that spectrum, take what you need from this. Know that there are a lot of different resources out there for you. And yeah, it's okay to just sit with this for a little while and let it land and let it marinate and reflect on what's kind of coming up and what you're feeling about what I've shared, because it can take a while.
If people want to find you online, where can they go? What are your social handles?
Thank you so much for having me. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at sarahmenlove.health. Those are the best places. And yeah, feel free to comment, give me a message, connect. Yeah.
And what's your kind of work schedule kind of business? Are you like just 5 days a week, weekends, any time of day? Like, what kind of services do you offer?
So I work with people one-on-one, and there'll be a potential of me might be doing a group program next year as well. And I've got an in-person series running down here in Mount Maunganui. But I am, in terms of online, yeah, sort of on and off, like, and that's just boundaries that I'll create. I reply when I reply, and some days I have lots going on and other days I have more space for that. So in terms of reaching out to me, just reach out and I'll get back to you when I have the space and energy to do so.
And the coaching sessions are for any age, or?
Yeah, I've like predominantly worked with people sort of 23 to 50, 55, but you know, I know that this work is so beneficial for those that are younger, for teenagers, for yeah. So really, it's open, and that would just be a conversation to see if it's a good fit, because that's what it's all about. Like, less about age and more about if it's a good fit, if what I do would support you, and if you feel like you could resonate and work with me, because that's important as well. So yeah.
Awesome. No, it's really good to know, just so in case people are curious about work with you. Thanks so much for being here, Sarah. I really, really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your love and your ideas, and hopefully, yeah, you guys and my tribe know where to find me at the Big Sister Project on Facebook and Instagram. So we've got an underscore at the end, and then I've got my website as well, the-bigsisterproject.com. Yeah, and I've got lots of things coming up, as I imagine Sarah does as well, so keep your eyes peeled. And yeah, hope you enjoyed that, guys. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.